Welcome to Out of My Mouth, the program where raw thoughts meet unfiltered conversations.
Join us as we dive into the depths of human experience, where we share stories, perspectives, and insights that just might challenge the status quo.
Get ready to laugh, cry, and ponder the world around you like never before. This is Out of My Mouth.
The views and opinions of our guest and hosts do not necessarily reflect those of New Thought Media Network, or any organization we may be affiliated with. Here at New Thought Media Network, we welcome freedom of speech and courageous conversations. There are many topics that can be difficult to navigate. Challenging the status quo and engaging in lively debate is important to expanding our understanding of one another, and life in general. Creating a peaceful world doesn't happen because no one disagrees, it happens from a willingness to understanding one another. In our programming, we strive to expand consciousness and assist people in creating remarkable lives. Your comments are welcome at info@ntmedia.org.
Good afternoon and welcome to Out of My Mouth. Courageous conversations and conversations for a changing world. We're here to make a difference. I'm Barbara Jean.
Hi, Marg.
And I'm Cheryl.
And we're so delighted you're here with us today. And Marg, would you give us our land acknowledgement, please?
Thank you, Barbara. I'm happy to. Let's just take a moment and recognize where our feet are planted on this sacred land. In the spirit of reconciliation and peace, we are grateful for the opportunity to meet on these sacred lands. We thank the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. We recognize our oneness. We realize our history. We choose to create a new reality. We are one. Miigwech.
Miigwech. And it is my honor and my privilege to introduce our guest today, Thomas DeSchutter, Reverend Thomas DeSchutter. And I'm just going to call him Thomas for now. Thomas has 2 decades of experience in personal and corporate finance. He's the author of Bloom Your Money, Your Life, a Commonsense guide to building your personal wealth ecosystem. And he's an award-winning drummer as well. He's also a Master of Divinity from Unity Worldwide Ministries. And he's the Assistant Minister of Unity Vancouver Island. Thomas and his wife Leslie are the proud parents of twin teenage daughters. And as a family, they love traveling and experiencing new cultures, cuisine, and languages together. And so welcome, Thomas.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for saying yes and being our guest today.
Yeah. What did I say yes to?
I'll let Barbara Jean answer that one.
Thanks. Well, we're glad you said yes to coming on the show because you always have a very clear way of describing things and speaking truth. So we're really grateful you're here. And today, we started talking in the back before we came on about how certain topics are thought to maybe not belong in the church format. So, it might be considered political and not spiritual. And so one of the conversations I brought up was, because it's Pride Month, the LGBTQIA+ community is doing things big this month, and many spiritual centers will honor and respect that. And some will push back, saying, no, it's political to have talk about pride during a Sunday service. And I just wanted to bring it up because for me, pride is about learning or discovering or awakening to, another type of lifestyle and coming to a place of loving each other. But what are your thoughts, Thomas, about talking about pride or having a pride event at your church?
Well, it's interesting you said another type of lifestyle, because I'm trying to imagine this in the context of unity and oneness, then it's actually just a lifestyle.
Exactly.
It's not another type of lifestyle. It is just somebody's way of being, and I think that has to start there, as accepting people for their beingness and who they are.
So is it appropriate to talk about pride at church, do you think? Well,
I don't see it as something that's wrong, right? Like that's the thing, is it appropriate? Sure. I think I come at these things as I prepare myself to do any talk or to be a minister, I don't want to come at things from there's something wrong, and so I need to write something, as opposed to if this is where my congregation is at, if this is what's in my congregation, if this is what the landscape looks like, then it's appropriate to talk about whatever that looks like, whatever is happening within the people that we are serving. And so I know we got on this topic because somebody was told by the board they couldn't. And I just question that. I don't know that that's the board's place, because if I'm coming at this from serving, then the job is about serving the ministry, not the board, not an individual. And not even myself, although it's hard not to do that, because because a minister is human and they have their own thoughts and feelings and emotions that are obviously going to come up and come out of them in their experiences. They're trying to get a grip on what is spirituality, what is this teaching trying to show me, or what do I need to learn from this situation, whatever I'm in. So I don't actually know if I answered your question, but I don't think it's an easy yes or no, or this is right or wrong. I think it goes down to the dualities of everything, right? If it's in the congregation, it's asking to be served.
Absolutely. Yes.
So what about having a pride event?
Well, again, I think that's up to the congregation. That's up to the people. The way we've kind of started to structure ourselves here is to move away from the board and the minister deciding what events should happen, and allowing the congregation to come forth with events that they are impassioned about, that they want to do, and then see if it fits the mandate of the ministry. Right. Like, let's start with, so for example, if I wanted to be way out, I used to play in a thrash metal band. I don't know if, a thrash metal band performance would be appropriate for my Unity Center, right? So I might say, hey, I want to play some death metal here at Unity. I'm planning an event. And the events committee might go, yeah, that doesn't really line up with what we're talking about here. And so it would be like, hey, you could go do that, but maybe go do that somewhere else.
Right.
Right.
And what I'm hearing you talk about, Thomas, is what we call mission-centric today, right? Moving away from minister-centric, and looking at what does the congregation want, and what kind of events do they want, and also to bring in, how does that serve our mission?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I think I actually think there's a both and, because as a minister, and I've I've sat in the classes with Gary around this minister centric versus community centric or spiritual center centric. It's both and, because a minister can only come from their frame of reference ever. Like, as much as I want to believe that I have the spirit of the people within me and I'm coming from there, it's still through my lens and still through my perceptions and whatever filters I have going on. And, you know, they certainly gave us a lot of conversation in seminary about clearing our filters and clearing ourselves and all that. But at the end of the day, it's still my filter. And so there is an element of trying to lead and also following the mission of the ministry, because, you know, any minister can be replaced, right? So having the idea of having a ministry that is about something is far greater a purpose and a long-term planning than to be centered on just what a minister wants to have. Because once that minister goes, what have you got? You're left with what?
Yeah. And what the minister brings. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Going back to the pride comments, one of the things I think the board had referred to, and in this instance, was that it was political. And they didn't want it to be any part of their ministry or the ministry there because of the fact that it was political. And so some of the questions come up for me is, what is political about it? I don't know. And the other thing for me is, what is social justice? Is that political? Like, how do we balance these things? And I'm not sure there's an answer, just, you know, wondering what comments you or anybody, you know, my colleagues have for that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll jump in because I'm always willing to roast my feet.
Feet to the fire. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I think, so when I think of what is political, anytime the government makes a stand about something as their agenda or their direction, whether it's depending on, you know, what, I mean, if you were to look at the US, there's really only two choices, right? And they both make their stands. In Canada, we have more, but they all kind of make their stand on what they think needs to be solved for this country. And then they start diverting money to it and taking taxpayers' dollars and putting it into something. And as soon as you do that, in my mind, it's become political, because they're determining what they believe is their agenda to do what they want to do with the funds. And so you can say, well, if you're in support of something that they're doing, you might say, well, that's not political. That's just common sense. Of course they should be doing that. But if you're not in support of that and you're paying your taxes, you're going to be of the mind that, who the heck do they think they are putting the money into? I didn't sign up for that. And so I think no matter what it does, as soon as they make a stand and take a position on something and start saying, this is the one way we're going to do it and this other way is the wrong way, it has now become a political football.
Mm-hmm. So what about freedom of speech? Government has said freedom of speech is a right. Is that political, or is that reasonable, or is that
well,
being devil's advocate here?
Yeah, I know you are. So it is a right until it's not.
And it really is not, as
right.
we well know here, because we've been kicked out of YouTube for making statements.
Right.
Which is why there's a preamble at the beginning of our show.
Yeah. And so I would say that, you know, from what I read, and I'm probably the worst person to talk about politics because I really try not to care. Like I really I'm like, that is such a deep hole of, because if I get involved in it, my emotions will get up and then I lose my, something we talked about off air too was harmony, right? I like to create harmony in my life. Mm-hmm. So I avoid the things that take me out of harmony and put me into disharmony.
Oh, and we brought you here. Yes. We're so sorry.
That's okay. It's okay. So, it feels to me with some of the acts that our current government, Canadian government, is bringing to the table around the internet and the use of the internet and which news agencies can be involved in the internet. That seems to me like a step on freedom of speech. Now, I could be wrong, but that's my view, right? That to me is, you have now made this a political thing, and you're telling me that I have to follow a certain way of speaking or a certain way of hearing or listening, or what I can listen to or hear. And that is a very slippery slope, in my opinion. That starts, because then who is the magistrate over that, right? Who gets to say what is considered good speech or bad speech?
Yes. There comes the challenge.
Which brings me to spiritual centers and politics. So isn't there politics within spiritual centers too? What do people get to say or think or do, depending on who is maybe navigating the ship?
And who's on the board?
Who's on the board?
Well, I think the shortcut to all of this, for me, having been in the finance industry for over 2 decades, as soon as there's money involved, watch out.
That's so true.
That's it. If I'm putting money into this thing, what are you doing with my money? Because even though I gave it to you, it was still my money.
That's a very interesting point, Thomas, because I think that is the case for so many people is, I loaned you $5. How come you haven't given it back yet? And then resentment and bitterness hops in. I started a practice where when I give somebody money, I give it. If they return it, so be it. If they don't, who really cares? Because I didn't expect it back in the first place. So there's I think whenever people are involved, we all have ideas of what's right for me, what's going to be good for me, what will make me happy. And so I will sometimes push back on other areas because they make me uncomfortable.
And talking about that, I want to go back and just almost challenge something. I know that a lot of people don't watch the news, or like Thomas, you're saying, don't get involved in politics because that causes disharmony in you. And so where is that not spiritual bypassing?
No.
Because I'm thinking to myself, if we have to avoid something, not to be impacted or affected by it, couldn't we rather be working on being in the midst of it and not letting it impact us?
The challenge right now is a 24-hour news cycle that many people have running in the background of their homes all the time. And the way the brain works is if it hears one thing repeated over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, right? There was a shooting in the East End. There was a shooting in the East End. There was a shooting in the East End. There was one shooting, but because my brain took it in 1,000 times in the background of my home, all of a sudden I'm terrified to leave my home, possibly because shootings are happening everywhere. People are dying on the street. Is that the truth? No. So I don't watch the news. I get the news because people give it to me. But I don't watch it as a habit because for me, it doesn't disturb my well-being. But what it can do is affect the way I process information and the way I see the world around me. And I don't want that. Okay. I want to be able to say, yes, a bad thing happened, and here's my reaction to it, and move through those feelings. Yes. But also, I don't want it running my life.
No. And so there's the error, right? Is having it playing in the background all the time, or
going to bed with the evening news.
Yeah, exactly.
Your brain works all night, right?
Right. So it's not about whether we watch it or not. It's about whether we watch it 10 times a day, 100 times a day, or once a day.
And how it affects us when we watch it. Yeah. So when I heard the news about that cop chasing somebody down the 401 in the wrong direction and ended up killing a bunch of people. I was outraged. So my feelings of judgment and criticism of the police force and all kinds of things came up really big around that. If I watch that news story over and over again, I'm going to make myself sick. But there are people, I remember when 9/11 happened, and my son-in-law at the time had that station, that news story on for an entire week. My grandchildren were quite young at the time, right? It has an impact. It has an impact. So news is not necessarily bad, but too much of it, yeah. Thomas, what's your thoughts?
Well, I'll chime in since I sort of mentioned it. So, and maybe I live in the world of Pollyanna. Is that the right word? Where everything's rosy and yeah. Maybe that's it. And there will be those that will hear this and say I'm irresponsible and judge me for my position, and that's fine. They can do that. That's whatever they need to do is fine with me. My responsibility to myself is to live the life that I'm aiming for. And the life I'm aiming for is one of joy and love and peacefulness and appreciation and allowing others to be who they are. Even before I got to Unity, I had a very simple idea of how I wanted to live. And it was, if people aren't hurting other people or hurting themselves, it's probably got nothing to do with me.
Beautiful.
Right? Like really, it's really not my place. If they're hurting other people or they're hurting themselves, then maybe I have a responsibility to take a bigger look and to maybe get involved. Right? I'm not saying I do, but maybe I do. So my goal is to be the presence that I wish to see in the world, not to tell people how to live, but to show that, so that maybe if one person comes up and says, the person you're being is what I want to do. How do I do that? That's it. I've won. I've made a difference in the world. Yeah. It's not mine to fix everybody or to even think that there's even problems. Really, I mean, in the world of the dualities of all of this, is there a problem? I don't know. Maybe the problem is just my perception and the way I filter things and the way I view it. And so what there is for me to do is to go back to myself and clear myself of what is my problem here. What is the issue I have? Not what everybody else has. Although that's the fun place to be, right? It's a lot easier to point the finger and blame everybody else and judge everybody else than to take responsibility for who you are and why you're in the predicament you're in and what there is for you to do to move through it. That's harder to do.
Yeah, it's harder to stay in our own lane.
Yeah.
But really, it's the only place we have power. The minute I start worrying about what Mark's doing, I'm powerless. And it's going to disrupt my harmony.
Right. Yeah. So my choice to not watch the news or to turn away from it, revealed itself to me during COVID when, I myself, I am a unity person to the core. I believe that I have the ability to live a healthy life based on connection between my mind, body, and spirit. Exactly. I don't want somebody telling me what I have to do. I just don't. That's who I am. And the more I got involved in that conversation, the darker I became within myself. And so I made a conscious choice to stop, to remove myself from it, keep my opinion to myself, keep my life to myself, and allow other people to do what they need to do. Just allow me to do what I need to do. That's all I'm asking. That's it. Yeah. I don't need anybody to be a certain way for me. I just don't.
Yeah. I love your answer, though. I really do, because what you're saying to me is that if watching the news is going to shift where it is that you are aligning yourself with and living from a place of, then there's no reason to watch it because it's just going to take you out of alignment. So that for me makes sense, right? And what you just said, about it, it's really about being that example, living that, and doing what is needed for you to align your body. What is it? Mind, body, and soul, right?
Yeah.
And so that makes perfect sense to me. So thank you.
I choose not to read the newspaper, watch the news. Sometimes when I'm in a social situation and somebody says, "Oh, have you heard?" or "This is going on in this part of the world," part of me feels embarrassed because I don't know that. I don't know that has happened. I still choose not to watch the news and read the newspaper. What I do choose to do, as an example, is walk down the street, and as a stranger is walking by, I smile, I say hello, I have some type of engagement with them, same as at the store or whatever. And I know in that moment, there's a good chance that I had a positive impact on somebody's life. It's not that I'm going out there and saying, "Oh, I wonder who I can affect today." It's just a natural thing for me to have these interactions with other people. And I truly believe that is a way of changing the world.
I agree with you, Mark. That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Mhm.
Yeah. And the news, you'd have to watch every single news network and read every single paper and then decipher for yourself where the facts lie.
Yeah.
I went to university to become a journalist. And at that time, 100 years ago, close, it was who, what, where, when, why, period. If you editorialized anything, you got a flat 0. Didn't matter how much good information you had in your story, you got zip. You flunked it. Today, in order to find the facts, you have to drift through everybody's opinion. So we're not getting news anymore. We're getting bullshit. And
We're getting agendas.
We're getting agendas, absolutely. And you had mentioned earlier, Thomas, about the certain news channels being allowed to be online or whatever. Like there's a restriction as to who can be there. That in itself,
Censorship.
takes away, exactly, it takes away our rights. That's censorship. So we're, when I look at the news, I think, frankly, it's a waste of time. Very little factual information presented in a really clear, concise way.
And that's very true.
Maybe I'm just foolish, but I actually believe that the human spirit, which I believe is based in love and acceptance,
Yes.
will find its way through any conversation that is happening that is way offside, even though in the scope of it, there may be suffering that happens. There may be injustice that happens. I get it. But I have more faith in that evolution of the human spirit than I have in somebody else trying to tell me what I can or cannot have a conversation about. I have zero faith in that. That is now somebody who thinks they know what is the best for all people everywhere.
Doesn't that just remind you of the book of Job?
Yeah.
Yeah, Job, he knew it all. He was protecting, he was praying for his kids because they were sinners. Like he decided they needed to be fixed. So he's praying for it until he got smacked down. So yes,
That's another newspaper I never read.
It's my favorite book in the Bible because it just speaks about how we get in the wrong place. My duty, my responsibility is to live to my highest and best expression of life, love, possibility, right? And to honor life everywhere because I'm one with everything, right? Just we all are. There's a oneness. The ideas in the book of Job is I know better than everybody else, so let me put my agenda. Let me pray for you because you probably made a mistake. So I'll just say a prayer and protect you. Like there's a whole bunch of garbage around that gets me a little riled. And when I look at some of the things going on in the news and whatnot, I don't want to be a part of it. When my husband watches it, I leave the room. I go to my office, I turn on some music and come up with a different thing, because I'm not interested in the biases that are being presented. And on that note, it is time for a commercial break. So you're watching Out of My Mouth, and our wonderful guest today is Reverend Thomas DeSchutter, and we're going to be back in just a couple of minutes. You're watching the New Thought Media Network. Don't go away.
People of African Descent New Thought Group proudly presents Celebrating Our Soul, Consciously Creating Change at Unity Village, Thursday, August 1st through Sunday, August 4th. Some of our greatest keynote speakers, some of our finest musicians and vocalists, some of our amazing and experienced panelists, and some of our fabulous masterclass presenters will be there for you at Celebrating Our Soul, Consciously Creating Change at Unity Village this summer. Regular registration ends June 30th, so don't delay. Register today at padntg.com. Sponsorship opportunities are available at padntg.com. Volunteer opportunities are available at padntg.com. Go there now, padntg.com. See you there.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Spiritual Center, Kitchener, Om Center for Spiritual Living, La Mesa, Satya Center, Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for making New Thought Media Network a place to be. Please come be you. And remember, like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
Welcome back to Out of My Mouth and our wonderful guest, Thomas DeSchutter, and our conversation that's just really taking legs here. It's going all over the place. So really excited about it. So we were just talking about the news cycle and those of us who don't watch it. And that's 3 of the 4 of us. And Cheryl, you started that conversation. So was there anything else you wanted to touch base on with regard to watching the news? And
Well, I mean, I'm really glad I brought it up so that, our viewers and listeners can hear why it's important to really be conscious and aware of what it is that we're watching, where we're actually placing ourselves, the people we surround ourselves with, because I think it all speaks to exactly what Thomas was talking about. So I think those are wonderful points to bring up. Some of the things that came out talking about, censorship and freedom of speech and things like that for me. And I know that, again, like Thomas said, some people are going to judge me for this and probably have some things to say, but I'm going to say it anyway, is that we think we live in a free democracy.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that anymore. I don't believe that the US does. I do believe that, yes, we have a lot more freedom. We have a lot more privileges than many, many countries. We have, we have really so much more than many countries. And we also live in the illusion that it's free and democratic. I believe that we live, and these are my beliefs, in a police state, in a state made up of all, when I say state, countries made up of rules and regulations that have gone from one extreme to the other, that has really taken away my sense of freedom anyway. Yeah, I just find it interesting. I know that, I think, Thomas, in your talk, you referred to this, and I know, Barbara, we've had this conversation too, about people who have so much less and are so much happier.
Yeah.
Right? And why is that? And so it's looking at value systems. It's looking
they don't have to take care of so many things. That's why.
That's exactly it, right? That's exactly it. I mean, this sounds too terrible, but my husband and I, it's not like we are paupers, but we really don't have much to lose as many other people who...
But look at your living room behind you.
It's an illusion, Thomas. It's all an illusion. But what I'm referring to is, like, when this crash happened in 2008, the financial downfall, all that, I actually looked at him and I said to him, and this again sounds terrible, but I said, aren't we lucky? Because we really are not impacted much by this. So, it's not like we are upset or, wanting to, and unfortunately it's not a joke, because I believe people did take their lives, and things like that. So again, it's how we look at things and where we put our value on something.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think it's also about really, and I don't know, maybe being ignorant and unaware, or in my opinion, of what I'm saying, because it seems to be my perception, my perspective. If somebody else doesn't think like that, are they better off than me?
Right. I feel like I want to bring this back to our original place of the board and governance and what we could or should or shouldn't do or should do. Is that okay?
Oh,
Yeah.
please.
Yeah. Because, one of the things I wrestle with, and fortunately at this point, I'm not a minister of senior authority, so I don't have to wrestle with this as much, but I will, is what is ours to do. And I guess what sparked this again to bring it up was the commercial break. So the first ad was of African descent. I don't remember what it was all titled.
Conference coming up. Yeah.
Yeah. So is that political?
Yeah.
Right. Is land acknowledgement, is that political?
Mm-hmm.
And is Pride Month, is that political? And if I'm going to do one, do I have to do them all now? Like, where do I draw the line? Where's my celebration of Diwali? Well, that's happening. Where's so it begins to layer on top of each other, where one person might be going, well, you did that.
Mm-hmm.
So where is your support of this?
Mm-hmm.
And if you did those two things, well, then how come you left this one out?
Mm-hmm.
I thought this was important to us, right? It becomes this soup of unintentional political might within even a small community, where people are going to be questioning and wondering.
Mm-hmm.
And so back to the board, do they have the right to tell somebody whether they want to acknowledge, or a minister especially, to acknowledge something on a Sunday morning? I don't know. I mean, to bless something, do you have the right to tell me not to bless something? I don't know if you have that right as a board. I think there might be something that, if I was blessing something that was degrading to other human beings, that you might want to question that, right?
Yeah.
Like, I know that not everything can be just like, oh, let's just allow free speech willy-nilly. If it's fake and you're starting to actually call for the degradation of another human or a group of humans, whatever that is, then that's offside. Like, that's just like, no, I'm not going to listen to that. I'm not going to listen to jokes about other people. I'm just not going to, right? I will stop somebody and just say, hey, I'm not interested. Thank you, but you can keep that to yourself. I don't need to hear it. So I think there's a balance of what the board, the board needs to create an environment in which the congregation can flourish financially and have all of the safeguards necessary to make sure that people are taken care of. That's policy and procedure. That's really what the board is here to do. If I bring this back to a governance issue within a ministry, are we financially sound? Is anybody stealing the money? Are we putting the money in the right places for the message or the ministry's purpose? And then do we have the policies and procedures in place to make sure that there's no harm being done, right? And if there is, we have a way to manage it. That's really what governance and board authority is. As far as the Sunday, I mean, I always remember Reverend Patricia, who's our senior minister here, has always told me, like, Sunday is my bailiwick. That's it.
Absolutely.
That's my playground as a minister. And I think for the most part, yes. And there does need to be some questioning. Maybe somebody does need to question from time to time. Not really sure what you meant by that. Let's have a conversation about it and make sure we're all on the same page. That would be one approach. To just outright go, no, you can't discuss that. Well, I think that's offside. I think there's a conversation that can be had, and if somebody can make an argument for why it's important to the community to have this conversation, then that's what the community requires. Maybe I'm crazy. I don't know.
I agree with you, and I think sort of basing things around the community that we have, depending on, if you've got a community that's all LGBTQ plus people, you're going to do pride events. You're going to really do some of that. If it's a mixed congregation, but I think when it comes down to is the board, the board can call you on something that's out of line, but I don't see, even in my bylaws and stuff like that, the board does not have power over the content of the spiritual services. And that to me, and what sparked this was, a board going to a minister going, you can't acknowledge the LGBTQ community. So I think, it's always a fine balance as to what we share and how we share it. But I think for me, the most important thing is I'm never going to tell my people what they have to do. That's none of my business. I'm going to share ideas and thoughts. I would really like you to think for yourself and come up with what works for you. And if you like what I've said and it feels right for you, then take it. If it doesn't, leave it.
Yeah.
That to me is a really important thing as a minister. I mean, just because I said it doesn't mean you have to accept it.
I can't help thinking about it being a microcosm of governments. I'm sorry.
It is.
Because I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, wow, wouldn't that be so cool if that were the case with governments, right?
Stay in your lane.
Yeah.
Stay in your lane.
Speaking of lanes,
taking
it aside here, I'm thinking of pride, for instance. And I'm thinking of education and othering. And we sort of talked about that. You honed in on it, Thomas. Barbara said something absolutely, I know 100% she wasn't
Mhm.
othering. However, I caught what you caught, Thomas. I can't repeat it because I can't think of
And I
exactly
said
what
it
it was.
deliberately. I said it deliberately
Oh,
because that's
okay.
kind of the energy that had come forward from the board. Yeah, so go
Oh,
ahead.
no. This is early on
Yeah,
in
no,
this.
I know what you're talking about, where
Okay.
I said, an other lifestyle.
Right.
Another
Yeah.
lifestyle.
You got it.
Yeah, I don't
So,
think that way, but that was the presentation of the board that
right.
sparked this. Yeah.
So where I'm going now is I'm thinking, okay, so I'm within the LGBTQ plus community because I'm married to a woman. And so in my spiritual center, I never feel like I'm other. So then why do we need to have pride? Because then I'm other. However, there's the point of education too, right? And so for me, there's the education part, and then there's the political part. There's people that speak of pride in anger. And although I understand the reason, I also wonder I would like to be in a place where, okay, there's the education piece, but without the placards.
Yes.
Does that
Yes, it makes
sense?
perfect sense, Marg.
And I know we're, a ways
Yeah.
away from that. I prefer to just live in it. If you have a question that you want to address to me about the way I live and who I choose to love, etc., then go for it. But otherwise, I'm not going to walk down the street with a placard in my hand. Has nothing to do with me wanting to hide.
No. Yeah.
I love what you just said, and one of the reasons, and I was thinking about bringing it up earlier, and now you've brought it forward in my mind again. Somebody said to me the other day, why do we have to have a pride parade? Like, when are we going to have a heterosexual parade? Or, and I got all upset with them, but anyway. But what I said to them was, I still have a lot of stuff to learn and filters to clear, Thomas. I don't know if they'll let me in, but anyway.
Don't you clear your filters. No.
So what I said to them was, I said, for me, this is about celebrating who they are, right? It's about challenges that people have experienced that we have no idea about.
And are still experiencing.
And are still experiencing. And so the fact they have the freedom to celebrate and to have these parties and do these things, for me, is what it's about. And I said to them, don't mistake this for a, protest. Don't mistake this for a protest, right? Because for me, that's exactly what they were sort of saying was, that, why do they have to fight for their rights like this? And I was like, it's not about that. It's not a protest. It's more about a celebration. But again, yes, when are we othering and when are we celebrating together as one, instead of having these segregated or separated celebrations?
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good question, because I'm in the white male camp, the worst possible human on the face of the planet. The white male
so
born
glad to acknowledge that, man. We didn't
born in Canada. Like, you talk about the privilege. I actually have no opinion that's valid. So
now look at that. Look how the prejudice and all that, the bias and everything has turned around, right? And so where does it come to being that we are all human, no matter what sex, no matter what gender, no matter what We want to call ourselves what color we are. When are we all valued as human beings?
Peace on earth.
Peace
When?
on
Well, I
earth.
think that has to come from within in every
has to.
instance.
Yeah. So it's going to take a while.
Well, as much as I can hear the news that I have no rights, I've heard people say that your people have had it your way long enough. You get nothing now.
Yes.
Okay, well, what did I do to deserve that? I'm just a guy.
And I'm sorry to say that's what's happened in South Africa to whites.
Right.
People have no idea.
So the point for me in saying that is in my mind, so this is just me speaking for me, it's incumbent upon me to love myself and arm myself with all of the virtues that I require to live my life to its fullest, and not allow that external conversation penetrate my well-being.
Beautiful.
Because it's not how everybody feels.
No,
it's just
not.
how some people feel.
And it's not about you.
Exactly.
Right? And that, I think, is the most important thing. So you said it right. You're doing what you need to do to honor the life that you live. And I'm doing the same. And I know Cheryl and Marg are doing the same. And we live in a place right now where there are people fighting to maintain a status quo. And then we've got people who are trying to turn it over. And so it is causing a huge disruption. I recently had a situation where I was the other because I'm white, and sort of got a whole dump truck load of stuff dumped on me. But again, just sitting and accepting that, frankly, it's not about me. Right? It's really their journey, and allowing them to share their thoughts and feelings had a deep impact on me. But it also allowed me to get a sense of what some other people have lived with their whole lives, where they have been treated so poorly and judged, not because they did something wrong or because they're a bad person, but because their skin color is different, or the language they spoke was different, or the religion they practiced was different. And so I think all of us are being called to sort of surrender ourselves into that place of, what is mine to do? And can I stay in my lane and just love myself enough to be loving in a world that frankly needs it desperately, right? The more love we can.
I'll one up you. Love myself so much that I have to give it away.
I have to give it away. Yes.
I have so much of it. I actually need to just give it away because I can't carry it all. I played in a reggae band back in the early 80s. So I'm 19, 20 years old, maybe around this time. And sorry, mid 80s. So anyhow. So we were mixed, right? We had people from Jamaica that were authentic Jamaicans playing Jamaican reggae music. And we had guys like me, white guys in Canada, learning how to play reggae music. And I'm the drummer in the band. And our singer was from Jamaica. And he loved my playing and was like, "You play drums in my band." Great. I had somebody else in the band come up to me and tell me I had no right playing reggae music because I had not suffered. That was somebody's opinion of what I was allowed to play musically or not. I didn't pay any attention to it. I didn't give into it. I paid attention to it in that what was being said to me, but I didn't give in and quit the band. I continued to play in the band and honor reggae music. And I learned a lot. I learned, listening to Bob Marley and listening to the lyrics of Bob were like, wow, what a poet, a gift. This man is a gift to humanity. So I did experience that other side of it, very minor. I'm not trying to compare myself to this isn't a sad story at all. It's just I did see it, like I caught a glimpse of it and what that looks like. And and I'll share this story. I went to Kenya in 2019. I've been raised in this country with television in this country, and we're at the airport and it's late at night. It's like 11:30 p.m. and it's me with my mother-in-law, my wife, and my then 14-year-old daughters. So all of us white people there, and these young girls that I'm in charge of, right? And my wife and my mother-in-law. And we go to the parkade where my brother-in-law met us, and he had to go up 4 or 5 stories to get the car. So we're standing down below, and I'm standing there, and guess what? There's all these African men around me. And I find myself tense, like I need to protect my family right now. And this was great for me, because I'm in that state thinking I need to be worried. And all of a sudden, I don't know what overcame me. All of a sudden I had this thought come to me, and I always refer to myself as DeSchutter when I'm talking to myself. I use my last name. I'm like, DeSchutter, get your shit together. Let's go, buddy. I hope I can swear on the show, because I just did.
Oh, hell yeah.
All of a sudden I had this thought. I was like, dude, of course there are black men all around you. You're in frickin' Africa, you moron. Like I actually had to wake myself up.
Yeah.
And in that moment I decided, and I've shared this with other people, I've shared this with my wife and my kids. In that moment I actually decided, you know what? That ends today. That idea that I need to worry about this ends today. And I am going to embrace my next 4 weeks here in Kenya as me meeting people that are wonderful, beautiful human beings. And that's going to be my entire experience. And it was the best lesson I could give myself of conditioning, of being raised in a place where I was conditioned to think a certain way that was just so offside, so incredibly offside. And I'm grateful for the moment now. Like for me, that was like a wow, thank you, universe, for giving me this lesson and for really hitting me in the head with it.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, we're down to our last 3 minutes, if you can believe it. And so we always like to end the show with this. So, Thomas, what is one thing you would like people to take away from this hour?
Oh, wow.
The hot seat.
Yeah. Check in on yourself. Find out what your shit is and let it go.
Yeah.
How about that?
I love that. I love that.
And it's something I have to do every day. It's not like just because I've, graduated and I've been ordained means that I don't have a stink. I have a stink about me that needs to be cleared all the time.
Okay, I know my takeaway.
What's yours?
Shit happens.
Shit happens. What about you, Cheryl?
I'm going to say shit becomes fertilizer.
Yeah.
And from that, we grow these wonderful flowers called roses and make everything beautiful. I love this. Thomas, you have been a true gift. And I think what I would say for final remarks is I love the idea, just check in with yourself. If you have a bias, if you have something, when it comes up, don't just go, oh, well, that's me. Look at it. Where'd that actually come from? And do I still believe it? And does it work for me today? And I think that's the best thing all of us could do. And then love ourselves enough to give it away, to have to give it away everywhere we turn. And so that's the journey. That's the journey. Thomas, thank you, thank you, thank you. Marg and Cheryl, I love you, my sisters. I'm so glad we're doing this together. And for everybody who's watching, thank you so much. Be sure to tune in again next week. And just know that out of my mouth, all sorts of things come, and who knows what's coming next. You're watching the New Thought Media Network. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. See you next time. Bye for now.
On behalf of everyone at New Thought Media Network, thank you for being a member of our virtual family. Your financial contributions help share the New Thought message with people from around the world. Please visit and contribute at www.ntmedia.org/donate. New Thought Media Network. Come be you. And please like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, peace and blessings.